Yes, it is.
All right, yeah, I unplugged an air filter. So okay.
Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. We are here once again for another hour of what I call interesting conversations. We will talk about race on the second half of this, but we are going to do something just a little bit different for the first half of our second segment. I'm going to start this segment off by saying, Mom, I'm so sorry. I knew she would jump in the stream. Somebody said, hey, I told someone they couldn't control me. They said, hey, what's his mom's number? Mom, I want to apologize. For those of you who are out there, we got to treat our mamas right. You only get one. And I got busy and I got a phone call while she was on hold. And I realized about 40 minutes later that she was on hold. I did not get a chance to call her back. So, Mom, I'm sorry. Please don't put me on punishment. Don't take away my video games. I'm sorry. But we're here today, and I'm in the studio with my producer, John B, in the place to be. John, what's good?
Hello, hello.
That's
cold.
It is cold, and we came dressed appropriately. Unfortunately, the third wheel to this trio. There he is, Mark Bassett, our co-host. Mark, what's going on?
Not too much. I'm in a dungeon. I think it looks like I'm in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Not in the prison, though. Not in the prison.
You look like you're in the Bat Cave. But Mark, so you're in Fort Leavenworth.
Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Yeah, my son, as you know, Kareem's a major in the Army. He's stationed here. We're here to help out with our two granddaughters. His wife is at a conference for military influencers in Las Vegas.
This is how poor Mark is. You know, when his family needs babysitters, he and his wife just get on a plane and they fly out. It really low budget babysitting is what he does these days. You guys know him. He made all that money out there with that one company, I guess, and they did him well.
I wish, man. I wish.
That's why he makes a perfect yang to my yin. I got to be yin. You can be yang, okay? Because I'm just a poor black man on the wrong side of the track.
Come on, man.
No, Mark, but it's great to have you here today, and I'm glad that technology allows us all to be together. And some of you are probably looking and saying, yo, who's this lady that's in here? There's a lady that has impacted and jumped into the trio. Well, actually, we're going to have a conversation today with Kristen McDonald Rivet, and I got it right. I always think Pivot Rivet just to make sure that I get that last name right. And we are going to have a conversation. We did at least invite Miss Annette Glenn to be a part of this conversation, and we were anticipating her being here until there was a turn of events and she had other obligations. So we certainly wish her well for that, and maybe sometime in the future we'll be able to have another conversation. You know, John, we were talking about doing something. We were talking about why not stage a live forum and a debate. And the powers that be said the radio station would love to cover something like that. So maybe we'll do a head-to-head competition between the two. What do you think, John?
I don't remember this conversation at all.
It was with the powers that be. You're just my producer here.
Yeah, I just do it.
No, but it's great to have you. Thank you, Kristen, for being here. Please don't let the craziness around you affect you. I'm flying with you next. Mark, you got someone that's going to be flying shotgun with you on next week. My mom said she's going with you wherever you're going. I think he's flying back to Saginaw, so you're welcome to board the plane.
I will be in Saginaw next week, but in latter November, we'll be in South Florida for 10 days. So if Mother Walker wants to join us in South Florida, she's welcome to.
Does South Florida yet exist? I mean, you're talking about the eastern
the Atlantic side. We'll be over there by Cape Canaveral and then down in Boca Raton area.
Yeah, she's disappointed. We were supposed to be in what's the name of Cape Coral, but it no longer, it was really hit really bad. So we're gonna get into our conversation today. Kristen's like, what are these guys doing in here?
Yeah, no, what's your mom's name?
Geraldine.
Miss Geraldine. let me just, before I say anything about my
Oh, boy.
campaign, I just want to tell you that I'm the mom of 6 kids. 5 of them are grown, and I
Wow.
will appropriately chastise him before I leave the studio.
That
Always
sounds
call your
bad.
mama back.
That sounds like
Always,
we're gonna
always
spank him
call
before
your
we leave the
mama back.
studio here, John. But no, we're glad to have you with us here today, and we just want to, you've been on the campaign trail for some time now. So what have you learned? What's the difference between saying, "Hey, I want to be, 35th district"?
The 35th district.
Okay, so your Senate representing you from Michigan, the 35th district, to actually being out hearing what the people are saying. What's the difference?
Yeah, so let me just start by saying the 35th district is the cities of Saginaw, Midland, and Bay City, and all the townships that connect them. So it's a really, it's a great opportunity, I think, for the region because it unites all of our cities into the same place. And we announced for this office back in February when there was snow on the ground, and we have
Wow.
been on the doors and talking with people ever since. So when we first decided to do this, and I say we because this is a full-on family decision, and there are a lot of people that have joined us along the way. We knew that the race was going to be important, and we also knew that there was a lot of pain in the community and things that people were going to want to talk about. So since February, we've knocked on about 65,000 doors across the district.
65,000 doors.
65,000.
Wow.
65,000.
That's
I
crazy.
could never do that.
And
Yeah.
from what I hear, what did you say, Mark?
I said I could never do that. I don't think it's wow.
Yeah, I hate politics, but I love the power of the vote. Okay, so I could knock on the doors for a vote. But what I want to say is that this district, from what I'm hearing, is really one that everyone is looking at. What
It
happens
absolutely
with this
is.
particular district? Why is that?
Well, a couple of reasons. So one is that it's because the districts were redrawn, there is the control of the state Senate is up for grabs. And so we're one of the top targeted seats in the country on both the Republican and the Democratic side.
Is this a
So
new district? Is this a new
it's a brand new
district? Yeah.
So
that's what I
when
thought.
all the lines redrawn, it actually put and frankly, it's a 50-50 district. And I think most districts should be 50-50 districts so that there's real dialogue. Voters have real choices between who they're going to vote for, and it tends to weed out extremists. So the Senate has not been in place since 1984.
Wow.
So that really changed the ballgame. So we've had the New York Times out, we've had the Atlantic out, we've had USA Today national coverage of this race, which is not something I expected.
Well, I was watching the news and they were talking about it, and I'm like, wow, that's a first.
Right.
But what's interesting here is because John, you technically fall within what city limits?
I'm in Lincoln Township, which is in Standish, Michigan.
So you're a little bit further north.
I'm way up there. Yeah.
Okay, but Mark, you're a
I'm
Midland guy.
I'm in the heart of Republican country, so in Midland.
So
Have you been
does
to
your
Midland?
area, because Midland is kind of split, isn't it?
So let me just say this. So I don't have Midland County. I just have the city of Midland.
Right. Okay.
So the city of Midland is solidly purple. The folks that think that is a deeply Republican city haven't looked at the data in a really long time, because I mean,
that's me and Mark. I just thought, since Mark was a rich white guy, he had to be.
When's the last time a Democrat won?
I'll take the vote to the rich white guys.
Yeah.
Mark.
I said, when's the last time a Democrat won in Midland?
Yeah.
2018.
Wow. So this is my question. So there's a number of things. We were looking at something that was published, and I can't remember where I read it, but it said that, like, for instance, the city of Saginaw has per capita has replaced cities like Detroit as being the most violent cities per capita in the nation.
Okay.
We're looking at issues with gun violence. Saginaw has a serious issue with violence that is perpetrated by guns. How would you begin, or what would your philosophy be on solving these types of issues and dealing with some of the issues that Saginaw has as it relates to crime?
Yeah. There's so much space to cover in that, but I've had a lot of conversations. So we've been knocking on doors in Saginaw since the very beginning. We knock in Saginaw almost every single day, talking to people, moms that are raising their kids, and and folks that are active across the community. And then about 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to sit with some of our Saginaw police officers and some of our state troopers and talk about this. So I think it's not an easily solved issue, but ingrained in so many other things. So we have too many guns on our street. We need to, the thing that's really encouraging Saginaw are the partnerships between the pastors and the police and the ongoing dialogue that brings community in. But we also have to connect people in Saginaw with financial opportunity. The stabilization of our families, the stabilization of our neighborhoods, all of those things are factors that play into extreme violence. So one of the things that, I actually think the best violence prevention program is a high-paying job. In a road to opportunity. So we have to work on those things together. I did a little bit of this work when I worked in Detroit for about 10 years in the neighborhoods, creating partnerships with residents and police. And one of the things that became really important is this long-term look and this ongoing dialogue to really look at crime hotspots and places where, people that are living in the neighborhoods know what's coming. And if there's trust that is in place with police officers, then that actually makes neighborhoods safer. And we also need to figure out how we need more funding in our neighborhoods, and we need more funding for our
Well, I got this question because you're a Democrat. Aren't you guys all for defunding the police? And you're sitting down with you're
so
confusing
glad
the
you're asking me
messaging.
this.
What's the messaging on
I
this
have
situation?
never in my lifetime called for the defunding the police. In fact, I have police officers in my family, and as a city commissioner in Bay City, I voted to increase our police's budget because it makes our neighborhoods safer. And I think that honestly that notion that all Democrats are defunding the police are scare tactics by Republicans. I don't know a single elected Democrat that's ever called for defunding the police. Certainly when you're talking to residents in Saginaw or, and residents in Midland and everywhere else in the district, nobody's calling for defunding the police. When somebody's breaking in my house, I want to dial 911 and have a police officer come.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that there has been a real cry for defunding the police. We definitely have heard that. The cries have been out there, and where people stand with that. And I don't know if that's correctly or inappropriately posed or coined or pictured
Right.
by the party or not. But I, as you said, the thing that I'm saying is I am all for my family. Come from paramilitary police officers, everything career. When I call 911, I don't want Tyrone or Louise or whoever. I want the police to show up to protect us in our community. So
But that doesn't mean we don't have to work on it, right?
Okay, so what do you mean? How do you work on it?
You can do both things. So this is where I'm just going to keep saying this: trusting conversations between residents, pastors coordinating that, and sitting down with our local police officers as well as state police officers and really really having conversations about what's going on in the neighborhoods and building. The world is run on relationships. We have a problem in this country of Black men being shot in circumstances that never had to get to the point that they were, and we can't not deal with that. But that doesn't mean that we are defunding our police, that we're pulling police presence out of our neighborhoods. It just means that we have to be able to have these brave conversations and talk about what's really happening and what people's perceptions are of one another.
Well, Tuesday was debate night in the country. We saw debates all over the place.
Yeah.
And candidates were really trying to draw some stark differences between them and their opponents. I'm going to ask you even more broad question. What is the difference? Because as a Black man who's my major or my biggest vote or issue ballot is really about voting rights. It's about making sure that we ensure the vote, that we protect the vote. And that vote is not just something that we have to continually pass, but it becomes a part of just life that we have that right. What is the difference between the Republican and the Democratic parties? What do you see as the difference between the parties? And then we'll talk about the difference between you and your opponent. But what's the difference between the two parties?
So I actually think that we have seen some very scary tendencies, very scary proposals that have come forward from Republicans broadly across the country since the last election, and this fabricated storyline that's been put forward about the big lie and that the election was stolen. And in Michigan, we've had over 250 independent audits of the election with no substantial findings. We also had a bipartisan legislative committee that looked at it, that came out and said no substantial findings of fraud in our election system. And at that same time, we still have candidates that are running across the country, across the state, and right here in this district that will draw into question whether or not the 2020 vote was legitimate. And that's an incredibly frightening place to be. And it's being used I actually believe that, knowing that it's untrue, it's being used as a political narrative to try to pass legislation that makes it more difficult for people who tend to vote Democratic to vote, and putting obstacles in the place. And they do it in the name of election integrity. Don't have a problem with election integrity. We have spent millions of dollars in the last 2 years proving that.
Okay, well, Mark is a Republican. Jonathan is good looking, and I'm an independent. Okay.
Well, I'm a Democrat, so now we're all rounded out.
We're all here. We're all here.
But one of the things that we talk about on this show is really having courageous conversations on race, and how can we bring communities together. The current political climate, it's just really getting into the swing of things after this election. I imagine that it's going to ramp up a lot more. What would your role be? Because you got Saginaw, Midland.
Yeah.
How do you bring these communities together? How do you begin to unite our communities under a banner that moves us forward?
So that's obviously not a one-step process. You all have been at this for a while. Programs like this, I think, really, really help. We actually have to start getting folks to think across our county lines and across our township city lines, and being able to talk about, I think we start with the one or two things that we all want to work on together. And as a political leader, it's important that you begin by setting the table, convening folks, pulling them together, giving conversation weight and capital that will and by that I mean, when I say capital, I just mean reputational capital, things that these are tables that really matter, and shining a spotlight on them, and then carrying forward those ideas through policy, through the legislature, into the media, into anytime you're at a podium, to really talk about what we can accomplish together, as opposed to what we see from a lot of political leaders right now that are just basically trying to fill a Twitter feed.
So similar in that line, I know that Midland has done programs that incentivize collaboration between organizations within their area.
Right.
And I know Bay City's done similar things. And I think Saginaw's starting to kind of get into that sphere. How do you do that to promote the region? I've heard a lot about regionalism. How do you do that to promote the entire region?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question. So one of the things that we know, Michigan as a whole is losing population, which is a really big problem. But our region is losing population faster than any other in the state. And that is an economic crisis. If we can't hold our talent here and attract talent here, we're not going to be able to increase high wage jobs that are coming. So we are not going to be able to create this attractive space to live unless it's regional. But if you consider what we have regionally, where we have 2 symphonies, we've got a hockey team, we've got a baseball team, we've got the Tall Ships Festival, we've got all of this incredible stuff here. It's not you can't package that unless it's regional. But I do think, so for instance, right now, the legislature is still sitting on billions of dollars of COVID relief dollars. And a lot of that is about rebuilding after the pandemic. Well, what if the state came in and said, listen, Saginaw, Bay City, Midland, you also are spending money on economic development. If you agree to do it regionally, we'll match you dollar for dollar. Right? There's ways to make this happen. So everybody loves the concept of collaboration and regionalism until money gets on the table.
Then we need it for our city. Right.
Then it becomes, this is ours. But the state can act differently. in the way that it is making funds available to communities. And I really believe that not all, but some of those dollars, particularly around economic development, needs to be tied to regionalism, and people start to change the way they think about things when there's a carrot that they can move toward.
Wow. Go ahead. Oh, okay. I didn't know. Mark, did you want to jump in here?
No, number one, as Kareem said, I am a Republican, though I've become disillusioned with the Republican Party for just the thing you're talking about. And so I'm voting on one. I used to laugh at people that were single issue voters, and I've become a single issue voter. Anyone that Donald Trump supports, endorses, or they use his name, I am voting against. So, but anyway, so I really
Tell us how you really feel, Mark.
I really like a lot of what you're saying and your approach. But I guess, when I've dealt with trying to work across some of these different cities, and Midland and Saginaw are just so diverse. And Midland is its own unique bubble because they have they have foundations and large companies that fund a lot of stuff that they don't, frankly, play well with other cities usually. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and it's all the right thing to say, but how do you really get these really diverse, different communities to really begin to collaborate, rather than just having a platitude over the top saying, hey, yeah, let's get them to collaborate?
Well, I think that we can start on the really big stuff. We know that Michigan has disinvested in our infrastructure for the last 30 or 40 years. And I don't just mean our roads, but I do mean our roads, right? But it's also, we've looked at our local schools, the infrastructure in our schools is decline. We need a lot of work to happen across the board, whether we're including in lead line replacement. But the other pieces, we got $1.4 billion out there in Michigan around broadband. For us to do that separately as counties, whether we're talking about just the needs assessment or how we're laying lines or how we're giving access, that has to happen on a regional level. It is from a cost effective. I mean, I do understand the Midland bubble, but I also understand that in Midland, they hate to waste a dollar. So it becomes a space where I think that we start with infrastructure, and then we start looking at the investment in community assets and how bringing people across county lines is beneficial, financially beneficial for everybody. I think we start to build a base and a muscle memory of that kind of collaboration that we can continue to build on. It's a long road, but we can. Yep. I'm optimistic. I think we can do it.
All right, we got just a few minutes left here, a couple of minutes left here. I want to ask you inflation's hitting everybody.
Yeah.
What do you think we need to do as we begin to move forward? Rates are going up, prices are going, everything's going up. Yep. Nothing seems to be coming down. So what do we do?
Well, you heard Governor Whitmer say, and I agree that obviously inflation is a national and global issue right now. There's certainly not anything as a state senator that I'm really going to be able to do about inflation. Certainly not in my current role as a Bay City commissioner. I'm not be able to control inflation, but what we have to focus on, what we can do, is figure out how to put more money in people's pockets. And from my lens, the most important thing are folks, working families that are middle class, lower middle class. We know that we have 6 in 10 jobs that are paying less than $47,000 a year. Those are the folks that need to be able to have more money. We can do that through passing working families tax break in the form of the earned income tax credit. Let's triple that. Let's figure out how we can do a temporary pause in the gas tax. We can look at eliminating the pension tax. I talk to so many seniors who are struggling on the edge of poverty. So until we get relief from inflation, our responsibility is to ensure that working families have as much money in their pockets as we can provide.
Wow, we certainly want to thank you for stopping by today. I know, how many doors have you knocked on?
65,000.
65,000. You got a few thousand more to knock in our community. We certainly want to thank you for stopping by.
I'm headed back out in the rain as soon as we're done here.
United Shades of Gray. It's great to be a part of the conversation and to be able to sit down and have these conversations with our candidates. We wish you well on your endeavors, but I've got some unfinished business that I've got to talk to. More things have been happening with Kanye, Yeezy, whatever you're going to call him. I promised my guys that I would go back and listen to last week's show and to see if I really stand by some of the things that we were saying or how I felt about our communication. I did that. I can't wait to come back and talk about what's happening because this dude is imploding overnight. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to continue this conversation after we take this commercial break.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Gray conversations of race in America. Normally, we start off talking about what's hot off the press. We did a little pivot on today and called an audible, but we're going to get back to what's happening. Guys, I told you on last week that I was going to go back and take a look at, take a listen to the conversation that we were having as it related to Kanye West. And I think it was you, John, who said this same thing would happen if this was, a white guy.
I think we both said that.
Yeah. If this was a white guy, far right guy saying he's gonna blow up something or whatever, or just something of that nature, that he would receive the same kind of feedback. So I went back and I was listening, and I'm gonna say that I think I'm gonna concede to about 79% that you guys might be right.
79, not 81. Come on.
Hey, I had to keep it low. No, because I was listening to it and I was like, I think that you guys might be on to something. And you might be right. And sometimes, we get into a rhythm of talking and we don't necessarily think about those. But I did go back and think, and I was like, you might be kind of right. As I listened to some of the stuff again, I was like, yeah, Ye is crazy. He's, I'm gonna call him, his new name is Ye. I'm gonna respect my man. It's a government change. So Ye is crazy. But what was interesting is, and I want to throw this out there, there's a lot of cancellations and things that are going on as it relates to him now. And it's Adidas.
Everybody.
Everybody across the board, right? But what was interesting is that Adidas took quite a while to make a decision on what to do. And it was because they were estimating he owns 100% of his brand. So Adidas would be losing about $245 million. We understand why they might take a pause on that. But go ahead, John.
I saw a quote from him, and I'm not sure how verified this is, but it was from a fairly reputable source.
Okay.
Then he said something about, I can say this, and Adidas still has me.
Yeah.
Before they canceled.
Yeah, that was the day. That was the day before. He was on he was actually, that was not a day before, a week before. He was on, it's called Drink Champs. It's a podcast with Noriega, who are some hip hop legends and things. And he says that, like I say, went to, and Adidas is not gonna, I still have Adidas. And Adidas had to make a strong statement, like, we're gonna.
Adidas is getting quite a bit of backlash for taking so long. It's like, what took you so long?
Because it's that old, it's greenbacks, it's that almighty dollar, right?
I understand, but I understand, but they're going to be dealing with ramifications as a result of that. So.
I think but there are still people out there that are going to buy his stuff. We've seen this. People come out, and it's almost
get it. I don't get his stuff, to be honest. I get his music. I don't get his design. It's just
his. Well, he says he's the greatest. Well, I don't even want to get into that. What I want to do is get back to let's focus up. I want to talk about a statement that he made a while back, and it had no repercussions whatsoever when he said that slavery, he feels like slavery for Black people was a matter of choice. And I was like, the Black community was like upset about that. Like, how the heck are you going to say that slavery was a matter of choice? So Black people chose to be slaves.
What was his logic for that? Did he give a
That-
reasoning or just it's a statement?
Well, it was a statement that he made, but then he went on to explain it, and he was just saying that basically that they needed to empower themselves. It was very tone deaf to the things of slavery, I'll tell you that. But
Right.
nothing that he ever says is really rooted in real substance. But I'll tell you what communities of color are saying now. Like, why was there not such a huge Black backlash after saying that versus saying some of these other things? And I was just like, it's all crazy. I'm not gonna stand and risk any of my life or my time or my air, or because let's be honest about something. Kanye's problems are not the Black community's problems. He still has billionaire problems. And what we were saying on last week, that when you say certain things, you got to be responsible and take accountability and know that there's going to be repercussions for the things that you say. We give straight conversation here, even on this show, but we understand that there are barriers and lines that we have to, frame certain conversations as we have them. So we're going to leave. I don't want to talk about Kanye anymore. He's not getting any more of this airtime, but I told you guys that I would go back and look at that. And so I wanted to make sure that I did. Now, what I do want to talk about is, as we were talking about debates on the first segment, there was a big debate in Pennsylvania between Dr. Oz and Fetterman. Now, why are you laughing, Mark?
Just you got
Mark is like cracking up laughing. I'm having
interesting. Again, I've checked out largely of politics altogether, but you've basically got this TV doctor running for office and this, this other guy who I don't know a lot about, who, anyway.
So my question, Mark, honestly, and you got to get politically, you got to get involved, because it's what's going to be here for the next 2 years, right? And then it starts over. So we never are without it. But
it's Groundhog Day, man.
This is my question, and this is my question. And I'm surprised no one from the Association of American Disabilities has said anything. Fetterman has had a stroke, and the world knows that. He used a teleprompter to help him get through the debate. Is it possible, or do we have issues with people not being a perfect, quote unquote, candidate? I know that everybody has health issues. This is not the president of the United States, which I certainly understand. And it appears in some statements that his health is being used against him, or being. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah,
John?
I think people are questioning. I would assume, and again, following the race closely, they're questioning if he's at 100% mental capacity because of the stroke. Is he reduced
mental capacity, or is it physical capacity?
Well, both. I think they're more concerned, frankly. I would in that role of the governor. It's not the president of the United States. It's still a very important role, etc.
He's
but
the president.
I would be more concerned about mental to start, and then physical. But I think I haven't seen him move around physically, but my guess would be it's around mental, especially if he starts needing teleprompters and that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. So because technically most people who have strokes within that 6 month marker, they tend to kind of get back to normal. I was just wondering, like, because we have seen people in this crazy political context, like making fun of people with disabilities, which is not okay.
Yeah.
And are we now in a place that we think that if a person is not has had issues health-wise, that they can no longer, or are no longer capable of serving? Or is it just
I think it's a fair question.
Okay.
What is this person's mental and physical capability to hold what is a pretty demanding office? And so, I mean, I think it's a fair question. I don't think you should make fun of it. And I'm not sure, if I were running against them, I would go after that. I would let people decide for themselves.
And I don't think Dr. Oz has really gone after it. I think that especially
basically Tucker Carlson's going after people like that.
Okay.
Yep. And with the debates and all that, it seems like Oz has been kind of hands off and just, yep, whatever you need to make this possible. I thought it was interesting that going into the debate, Oz's team was allegedly doing the well, or not Oz's team, Fetterman's team was allegedly doing the well. Oz is this TV personality, and he's very charismatic. He'd probably do better in the debate anyway, even if Fetterman were in.
I found
peak
that interesting
condition.
too. Yeah, so they were. Well, I mean, this is what you do. You downplay going in, and then you spin it after coming out.
They're setting up. He's not going to look as good from the beginning. Like there's a reason he's not going to show as well in the debate.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like Trump devalidating the election before it ever happened.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, had you ever noticed that whenever you saw like, whether it was Trump, you know, he was a bit oranger going into the debates. President Obama, he would have gray hair, and then he'd go into the debates and he would have all black hair. I'm like going, wait a minute. I know my eyes are not deceiving me. You know, you got, you know, they're trying to play. Has looks and how we look and what people appear to be, has that become more than the substance that people are bringing to the table?
I don't think so. I mean, hell, you had Donald Trump and Joe Biden running against each other.
Hey, you leave the oranges, the orange bombshell alone, okay? He had it going on with that comb over.
I just think
not
I don't think so. I don't think so.
All right, so I want to ask this question. As we're looking at this, do you guys celebrate Halloween?
Not a lot. It's not like Christmas for me. I did start a small Halloween decoration collection for just one room, but other than that, you just hand out some candy. That's about it.
Should Christians celebrate Halloween? And I was watching this because I know that for the Hispanic community, Los Dias de los Muertos is a huge thing. And as a kid growing up, we were always, the Day of the Dead stuff, the spiritual. And we don't hear about this as much anymore, but Devil's Night and just the spiritual inclination. I was just wondering, when you were growing up, did your family celebrate Halloween? Because I know that as a kid.
We went out trick-or-treating. I mean, I think most people view this as not a religious thing. It's just a thing. You go out, you dress up, and you hand out candy. You know, I mean, it's no different. It's a little bit like Mardi Gras. What's that?
It's witches and ghosts and goblins and cats and spells and black magic. So my thing is this: do we sometimes have a double standard on, or should we say, do we sometimes lose the meaning of what it means to be people of faith? And we ride it in certain times, and then we don't really stand up to the occasion in other times. Are you understanding what I'm asking, John?
I do. I do. I think faith is a very personal thing. I mean, so. On one extreme, you get super fundamentalist, and you will look poorly on a lot of things. Whereas someone who also views themselves as religious and Christian, I mean, I guess I'm saying there's shades. It's a continuum, and it's up to you to decide if you are a person of faith, what you view as, right. What you view as acceptable or not acceptable in a certain sense. I'm not a big believer in absolutes and these kind of things.
But Mark, my question is this: is our faith based upon what we view, or is it based upon what God's word says, or what God's word says views what the words view?
Sure, I mean, yeah.
You're a PK kid. Help us. Take us to church.
Okay, yeah. It's interesting. When I was growing up, I was never allowed to trick or treat. My dad is a Lutheran pastor. He was studying to be a Lutheran pastor. He had no objection to it whatsoever. It was my mom that was very strict on that. No, but we would celebrate as a family. We'd throw in a movie and go out to the movies or whatever. And then the next day, Mom would take me to the store, and I got to pick out whatever candy I wanted because it was at a discount.
She was being smart and frugal at the same time.
Yeah. But my younger sister, 10 years difference between us, she was allowed to trick or treat and celebrate with friends and all that through that. I see the difference being, if you're using it as an excuse to celebrate with the people you love, friends, family, if you're using it as an excuse to have a good time, then I don't see any problem with it. But if you are glorifying the dark aspects of it, like I'll sit down and I'll watch a horror movie, but I'm not. if you give an inch to the devil, there's a problem, kind of thing.
Do you know you just said the devil on the radio airwaves?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, cancel him. He's a Christian.
I know. I'm going to throw you another wrench. I play Dungeons and Dragons. Ooh.
Oh my goodness.
Ooh.
Well, wow. How do you feel about that?
Well, we need to
your mom, how did Jonathan's mom feel about you playing Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, Jonathan, what's mom saying about Dungeons and Dragons?
She doesn't like hearing about it. She's kind of softened on it. Dad loves playing it too.
Yeah. Okay.
The thing about Halloween that I think is interesting, and let me hijack this conversation for just a minute.
Go ahead.
As a Lutheran, Halloween takes on a very special day for us because it's All Saints Day.
All Saints Day
is the next day. Well,
Catholics as well.
That's Reformation Day. That's the day that Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg. So we celebrate Reformation Day the next day. And that was always part of the celebration for our family, was we recognized that, yep, this is Halloween. Everybody else is having fun. But then we talked about Reformation Day, and we talked about that aspect of the tradition as well.
Well, the reason I want to make sure that people understand the reason why I'm asking this question. It's because America is a Christian, founded on Christian principles. I say that historically. Exactly. I was going to say that's what I was trying to get back to. And I grew up trick-or-treating. Like, my grandparents were like, you went to hell for everything, right? I mean, but we still were allowed to trick-or-treat. Becoming an adult and having a clear sense of faith and what it means to me as a person, I'm really I'm standing against it. So I don't celebrate Halloween.
So you don't give out candy? Kids come to your door.
Kids are getting bricks if they're coming to my house or not. No, they're not getting candy if they're coming to my house. I don't pass out candy for Halloween and things of that nature. And this is a real thing. A lot of Christian, especially Pentecostal pastors, black pastors, are in a place where, like, why would we teach our children to hallow ghosts and goblins and witches, the dark satanic world, and then think that it's okay? And I ask that because we're Christians when it comes to things like abortion. We're Christian when it comes to things such as gender equality. But then we kind of are not so Christian when it comes to things such as Halloween. And so to me, I was just wondering if it makes a difference, because I think that if your message is not clear and you're not consistent, then you kind of need to rethink what you really believe and what you don't. If that makes sense.
I think that's a fair.
I just don't view it. I guess I don't view it as glorifying those things, I guess.
Well, Mark, you got a whole bunch of Santa Clauses all over the place representing Christmas.
Well, that's got nothing to do with Christmas, honestly, really. I mean, yes, Santa Claus comes from St. Nicholas, and but I mean, that's another holiday you could get into a whole discussion around. Is it any longer a Christian holiday, really? So.
But the question becomes, where does paganism enter into Christianity, and when do we make a difference between the two? And I think that if you don't stand for something, you fall for everything.
Well, many Christian religions have celebrations the day preceding All Saints Day, basically. You got Mardi Gras, you got all sorts of kind of like non-Christian kind of activity right before All Saints Day for whatever reason. So
right now.
Would you use Halloween as an excuse? Not an excuse, because that would acknowledge the holiday, I guess. But would you get together with friends and family and have a party?
Yeah, I mean, my friends and family get together all the time.
Okay.
Well, we used to. We don't so much anymore. But yeah, I get the idea. But it's not centered around. I mean, for Christmas we do. But like, for instance, let me make this declaration. I came from a very Christian family. Okay. And I say that because I consider myself a believer, because I believe a lot of Christians are double standards in terms of how they live, right? Believers, I believe in what God's word says. I believe in his Holy Spirit. I believe in all those things. That's who I am as a person. My faith is in Christ and not in man, right? I believe that Christians, and this was something that a name that was given to them was initially derogatory. I believe that many Christians waffle on so many things and don't really have a standing. carnal Christianity. I think a lot of us are very carnal in our nature. So when I see things like how we look at Christmas, and Mark, no offense, you my boy, you know that.
I understand.
But you know, we have made these things so commercial. Santa Claus and reindeers. Many Christians celebrate Easter and not Resurrection Sunday. And we're talking about bunnies and Easter rabbits and things of that nature. Then we bring into other holidays such as Halloween, which is ghosts, goblins, witches, and then we say that we're Christians when it comes to talking about gender equality
Yeah.
and abortion.
Yeah.
What
But
do we exemplify to our children and to other generations?
I think it's, yeah, I mean, I understand the point you're making. I guess, again, that's where I kind of go, it kind of comes up to each individual person. I mean, I'm very clear on what I do, how I interact. I try to be very diligent, and I'm a Catholic and Christian, and how I treat other people and the impact I'm making on the world. I just don't view I don't see a lack of congruence of me handing out Halloween candy on Halloween, or having Santa Clauses in my house as well as nativities. I just don't see the lack of congruence. I think there's far more important issues that you have congruence on, which is how you treat other people and the impact you make in the world, and where you stand on big issues like abortion, death penalty, how you treat people of poverty, etc.
Okay, what are you gonna say, John?
It is an important question, and I agree with Mark that it matters how you're celebrating it. But even if you go with your family and you say that you have a family movie night, or you go to the store the day after and pick up popcorn or candy or whatever, if you're seen to be recognizing a holiday, if other people see you recognizing a holiday that is maybe counter to your beliefs, what does that say to those people? Even if you know that it's you're celebrating in a right context, according to your faith. If other people see you celebrating at all and they don't know that context, they see you recognizing Halloween and going, "Oh, you're celebrating the holiday."
And so
people equate Halloween with black magic. I don't think anymore that people really equate Halloween with Satanism, black arts, black magic. I just don't.
You don't think so, Mark? What do you think most people dress up as for Halloween?
I just don't think they view it as they're glorified. I don't think they're doing that. I mean, most people aren't dressing up like that anymore. They're dressing up as their favorite Disney character
or Jeffrey Dahmer. I saw a kid that was dressed up like that. I was so sickened.
That's the parents, and
that's dark.
That's bad. Yeah,
absolutely. No. But when we allow, there's a phrase, and not to be preachy in here, but there's a phrase that says, "A little leaven leaveneth the whole lump," and what that means is that when you start making exceptions, either we're going to be Christians or believers. Now, let me ask a whole nother question. I don't,
just be careful you don't become a Pharisee. That's all I'm. Yeah.
No, and I'm not, because I believe that this world was meant to live in. We all need the grace of God.
Because that's the thing is again, it's like, who is going to be the arbiter of of what's
that's not what I'm saying. Cool. I'm not talking about a life of legalism among us, but I'm saying that at some point, if we're going to be truly believers and we're standing up and we have Christian foundations, then we've got to walk that walk. Yeah,
and we're going to be recognized by our fruits. That's what the Bible says. You'll know them by their fruits. So if you're, that's an interesting.
I mean, but ultimately, I think people will recognize you or me or Jonathan for the impact they make amongst other people and how they interact with other people in the community, not whether he hands out candy at Halloween or dresses up as somebody in Halloween. I just don't think people make a judgment based on that.
Well, okay. I mean, if that's what you think, I think that there's a world that's waiting for us to to rise up and to show some difference between the rest of the world that's out there. I really believe that there are people that desire for people who say that they're Christians to really look like Christ-like. Geraldine Bowen Walker, who's happens to be my mom, from a completely different generation. We didn't celebrate Halloween, what she say, but we wanted to make sure kids enjoyed having candy in their innocence. It was about the candy, no goblins and spooks. And I think that's what you guys are saying.
Yeah.
So I mean, we always want our kids to have a great time, But I think that one of the things is that for decades we have been so concerned about our kids having a great time, enjoying life, not being ostracized for having faith, and we've allowed much of what the world does to become a part of our faith, whether just latent or blatant. It's there, and if we're gonna be believers, we got to stand up for something.
Sure, I agree.
You're like, sure, I agree. So
Just
I'm
not,
gonna go.
just not Halloween.
What you say?
Just not whether you dress up at Halloween or not. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it is the end all, and
Yeah.
you can no longer be. But I think that my point of this is that if we're going to be Christians, we can't be Christians and believers in God's word when it is appropriate, based upon a platform or opinion or a vote or any of those things. We've got to be consistent with our stand. That means that we've got to stand for something or we'll fall for anything. I certainly appreciate you guys. This has been a great time together. As usual, I love being with you guys and having these conversations. We're going to have more conversations on politics, Mark, as we go forward. Next week, I don't want you guys to think about this. What are the most important things that are happening that we're getting ready to vote on? Let's talk about it next week. Take care of yourselves and each other. Grace and peace.